Hi everyone, it's Stephanie here and welcome back. In today's video, we are going to be creating this card that was inspired by this card that was designed by design team member Francine using new products from the May 2018 release. More specifically, we're going to be using this new stencil, which is called Basic Shapes Circles, and we're going to use it to create some bubbles on our card front. We're going to use the stripe pattern paper to embellish the card when we're finished, so I'm just setting that aside so we can go ahead and start to do the bubbles. Now, when I first saw this card by Francine, I was blown away. I love what she does with inks and stencils. She just creates some really cool designs and patterns, and I was so excited to recreate it in today's video. So I have a panel of white cardstock here, which currently measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, but I will trim that down 1/4 of an inch on the side so that it's a little bit more narrow than a standard card base. And I have the stencil here and I've added it to my card base with some Post-it tape. And I almost started stenciling and I realized I hadn't covered up the sides there, so I did add some more tape there. And now I'm going to use my ink to create the bubbles. Now this Post-it tape is really great for doing any sort of masking when you have a stencil like this where you have multiple open areas but you only want to use one at a time. And you'll see throughout this process that I just reuse all of these pieces, so I'm able to get a lot of use out of the pieces that I've already put on the stencil. So I'm just picking out some colors that go nicely together. So on this one here, I did some twisted citron and some peacock feathers. And I'm just kind of going around that circle until I have it fully filled in with color. Now I want to make sure I blend the colors together so it doesn't look like I have half of a color on one side and half on the other. And I also want to make sure that I'm kind of leaving it a little bit lighter in the center. And that is just going to really help to give it that bubble look. So you can see there when I took the stencil off, I had this really great multicolored circle to start with, and now we can kind of build on that to create our background. So on that one there, you can see that I didn't get a really nice defined edge, so I just put the stencil back on, and that's kind of the key to this when you're creating this type of a look, is you really want to have really nice defined edges and have a lighter area on the center of them. And that's what's really going to give it that bubble look and make them look more dimensional. So I just have this sped up quite a bit because I did want to show you all of the bubbles being added. I didn't want to kind of skip through it because it is a lot of fun to kind of see the pattern kind of form onto the background piece. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I am reusing that Post-it tape, so I'm just kind of repositioning it onto the stencil as I move it around and change out the sizes of the circles that I want to use. So one of the great things about doing this technique is that with the distress inks, when we layer one circle over another, you can kind of see the ink through the other circle, so it kind of gives it a really cool transparent look. I love that, and I really think it adds to the overall design to have some of these different circle areas completely overlapping each other. So as I go, I'm just kind of inking up the larger areas first, and then I'm overlapping with some smaller ones to give that really cool layered effect. And I'm changing out the colors as well. I wanted to have a really nice colorful design, so I wanted to have a really nice mix of colors. But I did try and keep some of the colors similar next to each other. So if I used a purple in one area, I tried to kind of incorporate that in the areas immediately around it, just to kind of give it some type of a cohesive design. And for some of the bubbles, I even went with 3 colors instead of 2, and some of them I actually only used 1. It just kind of depended what I wanted to add there. But I really love the look of the tricolor bubbles especially. I just think they look so pretty when they are finished, and they really pop off of the design. So you can see now as I start to fill this up, my Post-it tape is getting pretty colorful, and I didn't have any problems with the ink transferring off of the Post-it tape. Anytime that I got ink on the actual stencil, I did make sure to wipe that off since it will transfer from the stencil, but it seemed to stay on the Post-it tape no problem. So now I have a finished design, and I have to admit I was pretty happy with how this turned out. I love all of the different colors, and I love how it looks like these are all kind of floating on that panel. So now to create this sentiment on here, we're going to use the block Happy Birthday dies, and we're going to die cut directly through that bubble panel. And what we're going to do is we're just going to do some layering with all of the letters to create some dimension, but still have it look like that pattern is going right through that whole sentiment. So before we can add the panel to the card base, I am just adding this black and white stripe pattern paper to each side of that card base. So this is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And like I mentioned earlier, I did trim the panel down to 4 inches by 5 1/2, which is going to allow that stripe pattern paper to kind of peek out from both sides. I added adhesive to the entire back of this panel, and I also made sure to put liquid glue in between all of the letters as well so that they adhere down onto the card. And I added some adhesive to the card base underneath where all those letter openings are. And that's just going to allow me to quickly and easily replace all of those letters since I already have adhesive under there for them to stick to. So I started off with all of the white letters first, so I added those into the full happy birthday sentiment. And then I took the inside pieces of the letters that we die cut right from the panel, and I put all of those into the middle of all of the letters. And that is going to give us a complete die cut inlay design where everything is one layer and we have all of the happy birthday letters in white and all of the inside pieces that match the bubble background. Now I'm going to take my second set of white letters and add those to the design. And once I have those on there, we're going to add the last set of letters, which are the ones we die cut directly from that panel. So as we add these ones back on, we get the dimension in the sentiment since we have 2 layers underneath, but we get the full pattern that we've created on the front over top of all of the letters. So it's just a really great way to add a sentiment into the design, but not kind of cover up any of it with a sentiment strip or any type of stamping. And then once we have that sentiment completed, we can now go ahead and add the white gel pen detail, which I think is kind of what brings this whole design to life. Adding these little highlights onto each of the circles really makes them look like bubbles and really makes them look dimensional. So I love the overall design once we have these added. And once we have our little highlight areas done, then we are finished this card and we have this really cool, colorful bubble pattern all over the background. So thank you so much to Francine for creating this card that we were able to recreate in today's class. Thank you for joining me in today's video, and I hope to see you in another one soon. Thanks for watching.